Hello everyone. I hope I am audible. Hi. Yes, I am able to see all your messages. Like if don't mind if I am looking at the other way because I am just ensuring that every the comments on the YouTube section. Let me start by introducing myself. I am Gaurav Madan. I am currently a software engineer at Visa. Uh, Before that, I completed my graduation in electronics and communication in NSIT. I completed it just 2 months back. I did my internship at Visa only, and where I converted my PPO. In in Visa, I currently work on the tech stack of Docker and Kubernetes as such. But apart from that, I'm quite familiar with machine learning and web development, and I'm also quite focused on learning more and more computer science technologies. So, what all guys you expect from today's session? Just type it in the chat box. Like, is JavaScript is the future of web development? Yes, JavaScript is very much the future of uh, web, devel web development. Earlier, what used to happen is JavaScript was only used in the front end part of the web development, but after the Node.js have come along, JavaScript is the only can be used. It can be the only language to develop the web development from front end to back end to everything. So yeah, it's the future. Is JavaScript enough to get a job? Yes, definitely. Yes. Let me. Will JavaScript be useful if we want to get in data field? Like in data science fields, JavaScript is not so much uh, famous for that, but yeah, it's more like you get the concepts of programming. Is it complete? Yes, yes, we will be trying to complete the whole JavaScript. JS for React and Flutter. In Flutter, we don't use JavaScript, but yeah, in React we do. Yes, yeah. The duration will be 3 hours. We will be trying to complete what all is in important in JavaScript in 3 hours. Yeah, we will be starting in just 2 or 3 minutes. Let me share my screen. Yes, I hope it's visible now to everyone. Yes, let's begin now. Uh, Ideally why we use JavaScript. Like if you are currently reading about JavaScript, you must be familiar with HTML and CSS. So you know how to actually make a website. If I actually give you a task to build a static website, you would be somehow capable to do that. Okay, but where does the JavaScript role comes in the websites and all? It is used to make the website dynamic and more responsiveness. Okay, it's more like the consumer or the user can actually interact with the website. The website doesn't has to be too static, it can be dynamic as such. I hope everyone gets why we use JavaScript as such, and it's the only language that the browser can understand. Okay, the browser can run. So that's why it's something why JavaScript is why only why JavaScript is used in the web in the front end part. Okay, the HTML and CSS are not a programming language; they are a markup language, and CSS is a cascading style sheets. I hope everyone remembers knows what it is. Okay, so how do we actually let's begin from the basics only. How do we actually inculcate JavaScript into your HTML format? Okay, uh, this is how your boilerplate for an HTML looks like. Over here, you will be having a HTML tag. In that, you will be having an header tag, and in the next part, you will be having a body tag. I hope everyone is able to clear about that. Over here, you can mention whatever title you would like to have your website to have. Like we will be having JavaScript crash course, and over here, it's a link. It's where you actually attach your HTML to CSS over here. Right now, I don't have a CSS file as such, but we can make one. And whatever we put inside the website, all the elements that we will be putting in the HTML elements, and we can style it using the CSS over here. Similarly, how do you inculcate JavaScript over here? There are two methods. One is an internal method and one is an external method. It's just as similar as in CSS. Like in CSS, there used to be three ways: inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. Inline CSS, what you used to do was you mention what all the CSS properties that you want along with the inside the H1 inside the tags only. In internal CSS, you used to mention inside the head, you would put a style tag and you mention the all the CSS properties over here and you go through that. Similarly, what happens in an external CSS is it like you make another file, make save it as a .css file extension, and over here you can put all the CSS attributes and all to all the elements like you did in the internal CSS over here, and you will be connecting over here. I hope everyone is clear about that. JavaScript is as similar as that. If you want to have a internal JavaScript, you just mention the script tag. Over here, you can mention all the JavaScript language code and all for that. What all the algorithms that you will be writing, the variables and functions over here, you can write here as well. There's no issue in that. This is what is the internal JavaScript. And how do we do this external is? It is as similar as CSS. You make a file by the extension .js and you actually inculcate into the HTML format by putting a source attribute as the file name. Okay, so this is what is an external JavaScript. I hope everyone is clear about that. Yeah, it's quite simple right now. till now. Okay, so we will be writing all the JavaScript code inside this file only. Whatever you are writing in this, you can actually write it over here as well, and it will work the same only. It's just like it will look much more cleaner to separate all the HTML, CS, and JavaScript. Okay, so let's begin, I believe. How do we usually begin programming languages? We learn about its syntaxes and all. Okay, so over here we will be learning about syntax only. We will be starting with what is variables. Like I'm assuming like you all must have some experience with programming languages. Like if you must be doing a C++ over there, some point, you must be using different types of variable in order to have different types of data types. Like assumingly you want an int, so you might be mentioning an int over here. Apart from that, like string, you must be using all of this. Even in Java as well, you must be using these kind of in order to define the variables over here. But in JavaScript, this doesn't happen. Okay. In JavaScript, there is only one syntax in order to have define something as a variable, that is var. Okay. You mention var over here, and you mention what all the variable name that you want. Let's say x only, and you mention the value whatever you want over here. And this is how you define a variable in JavaScript. And JavaScript is able to know what all data type that this will have. Like right now it's x is equal to have put 5. So JavaScript knows that x is a data type of int. Otherwise, what you used to do is in C++ and Java is like uh, you have to tell the language that this variable will be of data type int. So I have to type it at int. But in JavaScript, you don't have to do that. I hope this is clear to everyone. Let me zoom in so that I hope it's now clear. Yeah, it's like Python only. In Python as well, the language is able to guess what all that is. And whatever you want to actually print it out in JavaScript, you print it out by the console.log. Okay. Now we will be seeing how actually I will be opening the file. Right now over here, you might not be able to see anything because we haven't written anything in HTML. We have written everything in JavaScript, and what all you printed out in JavaScript actually goes in the console. Okay, let me show you again. You right click and you go on to inspect. Okay, and in inspect, there are elements over here. What all you actually write in the HTML is you can see over here, and in the console, what all JavaScript is actually printing it out, you can have it here. And you can actually write the code of JavaScript over here as well. Let's say I write var y is equal to 2, or let's try something different. Okay, as you might see, what I have done now is I have defined another variable by the name y and have equal to into a string, and JavaScript is able to get it what this variable data type is. If we actually put type of y, is it just tells you what the data type of the variable is. Like similarly, if you put type of x over here, you will be able to get that it is a number over here. Like it's too much. Like I have opened. I have opened the YouTube video along with this so that there's no issue. Like please try to check your internet as well. The screen is totally blue. Yeah, I guess it's somehow connections only because I'm actually seeing the YouTube video myself as well. Okay, so let's move on. Like we have seen that you how do you define a variable and all, but along with some other properties of this variable, you can actually Like I'm trying to override what was in x. Let's say if x was 5 over here, I can write x as 7. Now x will become 7. This is quite basic what will happen in every language as such. But something which can happen again is even that x was before a type of x was a number, but now when you are redefining it, you can actually make it anything. Like I'm right now, it's making a string. Okay, and x, there will be no issues over here. As you can see, x has now become a string. I hope everything is clear with this way. There's no issue in that. Okay, something now let's see quite a weird things what happens in JavaScript and all. Like you all must be familiar with the terms as local variables and global variables. Uh, Okay, so what happens in a local variable and a global variable is like whatever you define outside all the functions and all is termed as a global variable. Like uh, all the functions, assumingly there are a lot of functions over here, and x will be a global variable to all those functions that will be written. Let's say I have written a function over here, so x will be a global variable in this function. Similarly, if I define a variable inside a function, that will be a local variable. So this will be a local variable, and whereas if x is a global variable. And you can change the value of global variable as such, there's no issue in that. But what is the actually issues come over here? Let's say if I define something as I'm writing statement as this. Okay. I actually want all of you to answer what will happen over here. Uh, like try ignore the line 10 start from line 23. What do you think will be the output at line 27? Yeah, it's something as 5. Even though, yeah, it will be 5 only, but as you might see, even though variable we have defined inside an if, it will still be able to have that output out at the line 27, because a variable, whenever you define a variable, it's a function scope. Okay, it's not a block scope. This is a terminology that you might have heard as block scope and function scope. Okay, so what happens in normally is like if you might be doing it in a C++, Java, or some other languages, whatever you would have been defined inside this if, this variable would have been applicable inside this if only. Outside that, this variable would not be able to access that values and all. I hope you are able to get that. But in JavaScript, variables are function scope. So what all you define inside what all you defined a variable of type var is, it will be a function scope. So it will have the scope of this whole document if it's inside an if. If I define inside this function another if, and I give something as var a is equal to 4, like that, that a will have a scope from line 16 to line 25 only. That's what the meaning of function scope is. I hope everyone is able to get what function is. It's in how the variables are. Okay, so we can have different things as well. Okay, even though let's see another intricacies of this var and all. This is a concept known as hoisting in, and we will be seeing what it is. Then I will be telling you what all the exact definition for that is. So let's say I am consoling.log something, a new variable. Okay, and I am defining the variable later on. Okay, what do you think will happen over here? What I have to do if I want to make a function scope? You just like what all you define through a var is actually a function scope. Is it? So error, undefined, not defined. Yeah, error. Yeah. Ideally, what would have happened if this would have been a normal programming language is that this would have shown an error that you haven't defined this variable b, because we are defining the variable at b at line 41 and actually using that variable in line 39. But that's not the case with the JavaScript. Okay. Yeah, what will happen in JavaScript is like uh, I have refreshed it. See, it is showing undefined. I hope everyone is able to see that. It's why is that? Like uh, that console.log was on line 39. It was showing undefined, not even 10, but it not an error, but an undefined value. Why is it so? Is it because of the what is in the properties of JavaScript? It's known as hoisting. What all variables that you define inside a JavaScript whole code and all, it's actually what all line you define in line, assuming line 41, it gets into the line 1. Let me repeat. So what all variable that you are defining inside the whole JavaScript document will actually be defined bef at the first only. So how it actually looks, how JavaScript reads the whole document is like assume that the document starts from line 37 to 41 only, and but how JavaScript will read that. Okay, I'm just printing it out over here. So it will read it like this, like you have defined a variable as b, and then you are consoling dot log b, and then you are actually assigning the value as 10. So JavaScript reads it like this. Okay, so this is that JavaScript property known as hoisting. Okay, so that's why whenever JavaScript declares it, it initializes to undefined. So that's why what happened is in line 45, a b variable has been defined and it has been initialized to an undefined. It is going on line 47 and it is consoling that log as undefined, and then having the value as, and then value is being assigned to it as 10. So how is this is how the JavaScript looks like, reads. Let me repeat once what hoisting is. Like we saw in if we can use the variables even before we have actually declared it, the var variables. Okay, that is because of some property, JavaScript property known as hoisting. We have mentioned the name over here. So how it goes through that is JavaScript reads all the variable definition that you do. It actually promotes it onto the first line, and all the variables are defined on the first line itself. Even before that first line executes. Okay, so assumingly that JavaScript document is this only, JavaScript will read it like this, that it will define a variable as b, and then it will console.log b, and then on the last line it will actually assign that b to have some value. Okay, so this is what hoisting is in JavaScript, and we will be Uh, I hope everything about hosting is clear. Like it's still, if you if it's clear, can you type it yes in the chat box so I can see? Again, repeat hosting. Okay, okay, I will be repeating it. So let me take another example over here. I'm actually commenting all the whole part out so that we see. We are consoling.log a variable named as a. That a is still not being defined over here, and we are defining a in the next line over here. So what would have happened in a normal programming languages is this would have shown an error, but in JavaScript this doesn't show an error, nor does it show a value as 1. It will show an a as undefined. Okay, let's see it. uh, Let me refresh it as well. As you can see, like it's showing as undefined. Why is it happening is it is because of the property as hoisting. Okay, so how JavaScript reads all of this is it will actually convert the whole document in this way is like all the variables that you are defining, it will be defined even before line 1. Okay, so JavaScript will read it in this way that it will define a variable, okay, in this way, and then all the lines happen. Okay, and then it will be over here. JavaScript will read it in this way. That's why it was a was console when you console.log a, it showed as undefined. Okay, undefined is also, it's not a kind of error. No, undefined is something that you haven't defined. Okay, you will be saying like it's kind of a data type only. Whenever you haven't given the some value to an variable and all, it will be an undefined. Okay, so that's what the properties of hoisting is. Even let me comment the other parts out, uncomment it out. So what will happen over here is, let me, yeah. So will right over here we have seen that var x is equal to 5, and over here var z is equal to 5 over here, where we have defined b as well and a as well. So how JavaScript will be reading over here is all those x, z, b and a will be defined even before line 1, and then it will be executed along the way. Okay, I hope this is clear. All those variables will be defined, and this works for the functions as well. Like assumingly, if I we have defined this variable as function test. Okay, let me define another variable, another function, say as test2. It will be even though I have defined this function later on, I'm calling it beforehand. This will work. This will not show an error. Okay, this is because functions also have that hoisting property of var. Okay, if we, as you can see in line 67, it is still showing I am in function test2. I hope this is clear. Okay, let's move on. Then we have seen the function hoisting property and variable hoisting property. There's another intricacies of var as well. Like you can reinitialize var how many times you want. Let's say we have already defined var over here. Like we have seen that var a is equal to 1. I can also initialize var a is equal to redefine and then reinitialize to something else, and this will not show an error. Like in other languages, this would have shown an error because you have already defined the variable as a. But over here, this will not show an error. This will just update the value of a. Let's see. As you can see, it is showing a as 5, and there's no error over here. Okay, this is another property of var. So this was one of the type of how you can define variables inside in JavaScript. As you might have seen that there's a lot of weird things that happens with var and all. Even though there's a property of hoisting in JavaScript, but it is a very good way when you actually define the variable and the functions before you are actually using it. In Okay, it's a very good habit to do it in that way, because that will the code will be a bit clean and there will be no issues while debugging it. So always, even though JavaScript has that property, but always try to define the variable before you are using it. Okay, so this was the first variable, that is var. Let's move on to the second type of variable that are in JavaScript, that is let. Okay, let is quite similar to var, but all the problems that we right now, not problems, but the weird things that we saw about var, it actually overcomes that part. Okay, so let's say we are defining another variable as, okay, variable one, and we define it in this way. Okay, it's, it's a normal way only, right? Okay. Over here it will console.log4 only. But now let's see what all the weird things were about var, and let's try to reciprocate that. Like now I'm consoling.log variable 2. What do you think will happen over here? It will show an error that you cannot access variable 2 before initialization. Okay, this is how a normal programming language variables usually work, and this is the property of let, but var doesn't work in that way. Okay, and another property I will be showing you about let is block scoped. Like we learned just a 5 to 10 minutes back that var is function scoped, but but let is block scoped. What all you mention inside an block will be applicable over there only. Okay, so that's I'm just commenting it out that this will show an error. So let's again I define another variable over here and define it giving some value. You can give it any value, okay? And I'm trying to console.log it outside. It will show an error. Okay, let's see. Okay, as it shows an error that variable 3 is not defined. Okay, so that's what the meaning of block scoped is. That block will start from line 87 till line 90. Only this variable 3 will exist. After that, this variable will not exist. If you have to actually use it, you will be using it inside this block only, and that will not show an error. Okay, so we have, as you can see, that line 89 will printing out a 5. Okay, and this will show an error. So these are the properties of let. Okay. The properties of let is uh, you cannot use it before that we have seen that, and you cannot actually all the times define it again. Like in variable var, we have already defined a as 1, and I can rationalize to var a is equal to 5. Okay, you cannot redefine the variable again and again. Okay, like I'm trying to do it, and it is even that VS Code is showing me an error over here. But if you somehow have a different uh, IDE, it will show you error in this as well. That syntax error, that variable one has already been declared. Okay, so what all we saw that the we new things about var is the weird things as well. Like I find it quite weird if you have learned you have if you have come from C++ and Java, that what all this is happening in JavaScript and all. Okay, but all of these things are actually being corrected in the let variables. Okay, any doubts till now? If you want to ask, you can type it in the chat box. Mm, no, sir. Reference. Understood, understood. Yeah. So variables are immutable in JavaScript? No, no, they are mutable. There's no issues in that. What is mostly used and why? Like it's completely up to your choice only, but it's more preferred if you use let, and we will be learning about the third type of variable, which is a const. Okay. You actually don't need CSS and HTML language knowledge over here. You can go over here. Okay, let's move on then. So we will be learning about the third, which is a const. As you might be able to know that what const will be, that what all you define in const, you cannot redefine it again as well. Okay. The apart from that, all the properties of let are same. Like you can console.log with at any times, but you cannot redefine it, reinitialize it again. Like variable 4, I'm defining as, yeah, you cannot do this. This will show an error. Okay, so it's showing an error assignment to constant variable at index. Okay, so let's move on. So this is what you have seen by a number and strings and all. Okay, so how do you define? You will not be using only strings and numbers over here. You will be using objects and arrays as such. Okay, so what all are the arrays are quite similar as there as are in other languages. Like you defined an my array and you give it some values over here. So it's just how a normal array is. Okay, let me comment that part out. See this part now. Okay, as you can see, this is an array over here. Yeah, indexing in JavaScript also happens from 0 only. So 0 index has 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is quite normal thing. But even though I have defined that my array as a const, we still be able to modify this array. If I say like my array put instead of 2 4, this will not show an array as such. Even though we have defined as a const, and I will tell you why in just a second. Okay, first let me console.log it again. Variable to uh, uh, oh sorry, there was over here. As you can see, even though we have defined the array as a const, we are still able to modify it because we are actually that array is is reference to this array only, this variable over here. Okay, what all we make the changes inside this array will actually doesn't matter. Okay, like if we try to redefine it again only, okay, and we define it as this will show an error, but the before one will not show an error. Okay, as you can see that the assignment to a constant variable is an error. Okay, but we can change the values inside that array. Okay, there's no issue in that. Okay, and it doesn't has to be like what all in C++ and Java you must be using a homogeneous array. That arrays will have all the values as the same data type only. This doesn't has to be a case when in JavaScript. You can have a string over here as well, and there's no issue in that. And you can have inside an array, you can have an array as well. Okay. So what it is now is, as you can see, this is not homogeneous. All these have a different data type. Like the first three are numbers, then you have two strings, and then you have an array inside an array, and all these are different. Okay. So there's there's no issue in that array as well, as you can see, and it will show you that way. So it can happen, you can have a multi-dimensional array as well. Okay. uh and let's see some weird things about this my array as well. Like right now that array length is 6. Okay, till here, over here there was some properties that are actually improves a programming, but now we will see something weird over JavaScript. Like over here you have only 6, the length of that my array is 6. If I access something outside that 6 and above, it will show it ideally should show me an error over here, but it will not actually. Okay, like right now that length is 6, I am accessing that index 7. So what will it do is it will actually show no error. And now let me console.log it as well. As you can see that the length itself increases. If we have I have used that array index 7, so the now the length has become 8, and that index will have that value. Okay, that seventh index will have 8, but as you can see that the sixth index is still not over here. It will show it as an empty. Okay, so these are the some properties of my of array objects in JavaScript. Okay, so these were some properties. uh let's move on then. Over here you can have the some functions as push and pop. You can have like in you used to do in stacks and queues over here in other languages. Like in array you can do this as well. These are some functions, and this will work the same. it will push on the back end and pop from the back only. So it will work like an stack only. Like if you consider that, as you can see, it was one was pushed over here and then it was popped. Okay. Now let's move on to some a different type of object. We are defining something known as an object. This is how an object looks like. It's more like you must be familiar with maps. So it's a key value pair over here. You mention something as a key one and it can have a value. Okay. Another key as well. And it can have like array, it can be homogeneous and heterogeneous. Like inside that only you can have another object as well. And inside, yeah, like I'm having an array. So, and I will also show you how to access all of this. Okay, see it first. Okay, so this is how that key value pair looks like. That you have a key one, key two, value two, and another key you have inside. So the objects are nested inside another, and inside key four you have that array. Okay, and how normally like a map you can access this object. Let's say I'm object dot e2 and it will output as normal. Okay, as you can see. Now let's see the different way that in we can access that. You can use the dot as well. Like inside this, I'm actually using dot key 3, dot key 5. So I'm able to access this value like that as well. So these are some properties of this my object. So it is like an tree over here. Like you must be familiar with trees over here. Let me draw it and show you. Okay. So you must be familiar with trees. So trees have some childrens. Okay. So you can mention you go over there when you want that you want this value. So from this you go to left, right, or some value. Okay. But in how does it look like is you have defined a my object and all this happens like a tree. So you mentioned key 1, key 2 and key 3 and over here you can access that values. I hope everyone is clear about this. If it's clear, please type it in yes. Let me go on through the questions as well, like what all I can go through. How do we check if an array has that element or there or not? There are some functions over here. We will be going through that. Don't worry. Okay. Uses of dots. No, it's just a way to access the elements only. Like you can access in dot format only as well as that brackets as well, like you used to do in a normal map. Okay. So let's move on. I guess we have seen what all the different data types of how it looks like. So let's define the data types as well. We have known what all the different variables are. Now let's know what all the different data types are there. Like we have seen what it is a number. Okay. We have seen what it is a string. In JavaScript, there is no char data type. There's only string. Okay. There's a big int over here. Okay. Like when you need a quite a big number, then you mention a big int. You can have boolean as well. In boolean, you know what all the values it has, true and false only. Okay. We saw this undefined over here. Okay. And there's another thing as a null. Okay. We will be seeing that. And a last thing, that is an object. Arrays are object as well. Okay, so don't get confused that we haven't mentioned a data type as array. Arrays are objects only. Okay, over here now let's begin to the operators in JavaScript. Okay, what all the operators can it be? Like an addition. How addition works in other languages is like in order to have some as addition is like both what all you two are adding should be of same data type only. But that's not the case with JavaScript. Okay, let's see now. Let me comment this all out. Let's say we are, let's see the simple one pehle. Uh, Okay, I'm just adding two numbers. So it will, we all know that this will show a 3. So why to see that? Okay. So now let's try something else. What do you think will be the output of this line 157? Let's see it in the chat box. Yeah, one number. Yeah, it will actually what will happen over here is like this one over here works as a concatenation. So one, even though it's a data type of a number, it will be converted to a string and then both these strings will get attached. Okay, let's see this as well over here. As you can see, it is showing a one number. Similar, that's how the properties of one it is. Okay, but sometimes what you need is like let's see 1 2 3 and adding some number over here. It will again show a 1 2 3 5 over here. What is happening is that this is being converted into a string and this is getting concatenated. But let's say I need this only, but I need that 1 2 3 inside the as a number, and I actually want the answer to be 128. So how can we do that is actually if we put a plus in before the string, it will convert that string into a number, and then this will happen in a normal way. Okay, let's see. As you can see, now it's showing as a 128. Any issues in that? Okay, so how it's showing it's even, but this will be executed only in the case when all the strings will be numbers only. There should not be a alphabet over here. Let's say I again do this, but I introduce some letters over here. So now it will show a none. None means basically an error over here. Okay, so it is showing that it is an error, error only. So you have to ensure when you are actually adding a string and a integer over here, and you actually want the output to be an integer, that string should have all the numbers, should have all in the numbers format only. It should cannot be in an alphanumerical. Okay, let's see another thing as well. Like you can add two strings as well in this way. So this will output it as a 246. You can add two strings as well because this has converted, this plus has converted the string into a number, and then you can add those two. Okay, but don't assume that this is the normal thing for in operators. This is not a normal thing. Okay, plus is an exception because plus can be used for addition as well, and in cases of strings a concatenation as well. So only these things are actually different in plus operators. Apart from that, all the other operators like minus, into, and divided by are same only. It behaves like an ideal way only. Okay, let's see, like console.log, you put 1 minus 2, you know what the answer over here. So let's see something different. Like I am uh, subtracting a string by a string. Okay, like in plus, you know that a concatenation happens. This is not an operator over here. In strings, this is not an operator. So what it will do is it will automatically convert the string into a number, and then will perform the action over here. So let's see. As you can see, it is showing 11. It has automatically converted the string into a number and has then performed the operation. In addition, you have to actually put a plus before that string as well. Like over here, you see that there are two pluses. This is the operator that you want to have, and this is just converting this string into a integer, into a number format, not an integer, into a number format. Okay, so like like you have subtracted two strings and two numbers, you can do it in this way as well. You can have a string and a number as well. It will work the same only. Like 23 will be converted to a number and then action will be performed. Okay. Now, as in as in plus operators, you cannot have that an alphabets inside the numbers and then perform this negative. Okay. This will show a NaN only. Okay. As you have seen. Okay. All those similar things happen for into and divide as well. Okay, let me copy it. And so what I am doing is just, okay, what will happen is again same thing, like all the operation will be executed no matter what, and then it will show an NaN in the last one because there are alphabets inside this string, and this strings has, if you are using an operator as into, it has to be a numbers only. Okay, similar thing for divide as well. Okay, I'm just copying it out and moving on. Okay, like right now it's two divide signs. Actually comment this part out, and this is the actual divide sign. You needed one only. Okay, as you can see now. Okay, like it's showing an NaN over here. Any issues till now? No, like negative sign into multiplication and division are behaving like a normal operator, like it usually works in a normal programming languages. Plus, on the other hand, is behaving like an operator for a numbers as well and a concatenator as well. Okay, when you actually put two strings and put a plus sign between them, this they will concatenate that. In other languages, you used to actually that would work for a string as well. But when you have a string and a number, like number has the for plus uh, addition operator for numbers will be working as a plus operator only, but for string will be a concatenator. So there is a clash over here. In that case, that they it will prefer the string. Okay, but in minus operator doesn't have anything for a string only, right? So it will convert that string into a number only and then will perform the action. If that cannot be converted into a number, it will show an NaN. Okay, yes, I guess it's clear only. So let's move on to the next part. Let's we have seen what if conditions are, how do we write it in JavaScript only. Okay, if and you mention a expression over here, like I can write true as well, false as well. Okay, when I'm writing false, this will never get executed over here. And like if let's write an expression. Okay, I'm saying x equal to 0 and it will so this is how a normal if and else works. Uh, you all must be familiar of this, like how this will work. Okay, now let's see some weird things in this. Let me show it only. Okay, like it's just showing 0. If I change it to 10, okay, then it will show a not 0. Okay, now let's see something different over here. Now I am making it a string and seeing it as 0. So what do you think the output for this should be? What do you think will be the output? Not 0, not 0, 0, 0, 0. It's validated. Okay, so it's more like half only. Half of you think like it will be a non-zero and half of you think will be a zero. So let's see it only. Okay, it is showing as 0. So how it is behaving like this is like even though we have defined x right now as a string over here, like if I console.log type of x over here, it will show a string only. And now over here 0 it's a int as a number only, but it is still this part is true. Why? Because when you use JavaScript and you use a to equal to, it will actually compare the values of the both on the both side, and it will not matter if these have the same data type only. Like if it's a string and it can be converted into a number, it will convert it into a number and then compare it. Okay. This is another property of JavaScript when you are using two double int, two double equal tos. Okay, like let's see the console type of as well. Like it is showing a string only. But how to avoid all of this? Okay, like doing this copying and pasting the same thing only. But how to ensure what when you are comparing that that variable should have the same data type as well. So in that cases, you put a another equal to over here. Okay. So now what it will do is it will output a not 0. It will actually ensure that the x should, even though that value should be same, but that data type should also be same and that data type should not convert. Okay. So this is something which is of JavaScript. Okay, and always keep in mind when you are actually building the some things via JavaScript, please include when you are comparing something, use this. Okay, triple equal to, and when you are actually using not equal to, try to use this. This will ensure that the data type properties also are being looked upon. I hope this was clear. Okay, let's move on to then loops. Okay, we know about loops, what loops are. Okay, in I'm saying, so this will work. We know how while loops are, and for for loops as well. Like you defined an I over here. You, I'm saying, okay. I guess everyone is familiar with this. We don't have to take too much time for this. Okay, like right now, what's happening in X is like X is over here is a string. So string zero is compared to by 5, and it is uh, it looks like that, like 0 is converted into a number format, and this is true. Then 0 is 1 added. As you can see, it's a plus operator over here, and X is a string. So what will happen is a concatenation will happen. So 0 1 will become again, then 0 1 is 1 only, 1 is less than 5, another 1 is added, so it becomes 0 1 1, as we can see. Okay, 0 1 1 is 11 only, then the loop breaks. Okay, so if I don't actually define it as a string and I do it in this way, okay, it will work in a normal way only. I guess no issues over here. Similarly, we have do while as well over here, and you mentioned the expression. I'm saying x plus plus and consoling.log. We know how it will work. It will again go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because it's 0 and we have actually increasing the value of x before, so it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we know this is normal of program. It's how you know programming only. Okay, now let's see something which is for loops which are quite special to JavaScript. Okay, there are two types of for loops, for in and for off. Okay, so what happens in for in is it goes like this. For I, I'm saying let I in an array. So what will happen is, and let's console.log this I. I will take the values of the index of this arrays. Okay, let's see. As you can see, it's showing 0, 1, 2. Let me comment the above part out. So okay, as you can see, it's looping over the indexes of the array only. Okay, you can have any array over here. Inside that array, you can have another array. You can have strings as well. Okay, and it will just output the index for it. And when you, if you need the values for it, you can, like I haven't used something as a variable over here. So let's define the variable, and you can put it on a my array over here. You go ahead. So this will now output everything like 0, 1, and it is outputting everything. Like you can console.log in this way as well. If you want to console print something on the same line only. So 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3. Yeah, I this must be quite clear. Like it's a for in, this is for and this is in. Okay. Now let's see for off. Okay. So for off will actually output what all the was in the array only. Okay. So how it actually loops through is like, let's see, we are consoling.log my array over here. Even though this is an array, it will look like an object only. Like if you go through, like the indexes becomes the keys and all the values becomes the value. I hope you can go through this part. Yeah, right. So over here, so for in actually loops over to the keys, and for off loops over the values of the object. Okay. So how this is how the for in and for off works. Okay. I hope this is clear to everyone. Okay. Any questions as such for each? Uh, it's going too fast. So can we remove an element by using for each loop? Yes, you can delete that, like how you remove an array only, right? Like we will be seeing some other properties from array that in which we will be actually deleting some part over here. Don't worry for that. We will be going through. I'm just going through a pathway only. Okay, right now we will be saying how to actually use of all of this, and then we will be saying how to actually delete something or not. There's a function known as splice. Okay, foreign actually goes through the keys of the object, whereas for of works goes through all the values of that object. Okay, my array is also an object only. Like if we let's define another now an object over here, and let's define it in this way only. And in the third index, let's define something, a different thing that you haven't seen. Like you can have a function being defined as well. Okay, and let's go through all of this. So I'm saying again, let I in my object and console.log I. So basically what I will go through is all the keys for the my object. Like right now I have given the keys as an indexing only, like 0, 1, 2, 3, but it doesn't have to be in this way. Like I can define it in this way as well, and this will work the same way. It is basically going through all the keys, as you can see, 10, 12, 23, 35. It is going through all the keys. And if we go and copy it, and if we change the into off, it will go through the values. Okay. But my object is not iterable. Over here, it will not show an error. In array, all the values will be iterable, but in object, it will not be an iterable. Okay, this is the only error that usually comes when you are actually iterating over the objects. In even in you must be familiar with the map data structure in C++ and Java. In Java, so in maps, you were able to go through the keys only, but in the in the value part, you will not be able to iterate over that. Okay, so that's how it works. Off will not work in a my object case. It will only work in an in object case. When you actually need to have print all the properties for it, you have to use a for in loop only. And over here, you can use my object and then as a format of this, like how you used to do in normal map. Okay, as you can see, we are able to go through all of this. One, two, three, and this is a function over here. Okay, I guess let's move on. Is there any prop like important? Okay, let's move on only. Even though we have seen how to define a functions, okay, like how this is how we define a function over here. After a function name, you define give a parenthesis, and inside this you can give arguments over here as well. Let's say I have given xyz over here, and you can console use all of these values over here. Okay, this you all are familiar with how functions usually work. Okay, now even though we now let's see how are the different way in which we can define functions. Let's say we are defining a const test, and I'm giving it as a function. This is another way in which we can how we can define the functions. You mention the name over here, and you mention the function word, and then a parenthesis, and then the curly braces. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay. You can have all the arguments that you need over here. Like I'm just putting for A and B over here. Similarly, now comes a part which is known as an arrow function. And how do you define an arrow function is you mention the name for it equal to parenthesis, and over here you mention the arrow. And how this arrow is made is it's an equal to sign and then a greater than sign. In this, please ensure that there is no space over here, because then this will be an error. Okay, it has to be in this way only. Okay, and this will work like an function only. Over here you mention the arguments that you need, and you can use all of this over here. Okay, and if you need to return something, you can return it as well. Let's say this is let's name this as a sum only. Okay, and I'm calling this sum. As you can see, we have just called it. We have actually been storing its value, so that's why that return was not able to see. Now let's do it. As you can see, it is consoling.log. Okay, so another thing that I would like to share with you is the pass by value and pass by reference. I hope you must have encountered these terms when you were learning other languages, but even if you haven't, let's go through it. What happens is, assumingly, like I have a variable as, let's use let. Okay, let as b and b as 5 over here, and I'm defining a function as change values. over here, and I'm mentioning. Okay. So basically, I'm saying is I'm changing the values of A and B, and then let's console out. What do you think will happen over here? Like we know this console.log will return a 3 and 5 over here. And as we are move on to line 287, we are going to this function, and it's over here. The function is saying change the value of A to 1 and B to 2. Okay. So what will be the output over here? Let's see. Uh, yeah, 1 2 1 2. If the output is 1 2, what do you think, like it's how passing by? Is it a pass by value or it's by pass by reference? 3 5. Yeah, majority says 1 2 and other people says 3 5. So let's see. The 3 5 are actually correct. So what is happening over here is that when you actually pass on the variables like a number and strings over here, like it is being passed by value. What all you are passing into this function, a copy of it's made, and it is all those modifications that you make inside this variables will be only applicable inside this block only, like in line 281 to 284. Like if we console.log over here as well, it will show 1 2 right now. Okay, as you can see, this 3 5 is the first one, then we have moving on to 1 2, like it's showing 1 2, and then again 3 5. So what is happening is, like all those parameters that you pass on, it is being passed by value, and all the modification that you will be making inside this function will be only applicable inside this function only. After this function, the all the changes that was before and were, it will be that only. Okay, so this was how pass by value works, and pass by value works in JavaScript for numbers, strings, and other, okay, boolean as well. In objects, it works as a pass by reference. We will see in that in just 2 minutes. Don't worry about that. Okay, as you can see. But what's the case, like if you actually wanted the A and B value to be changed, in that case you need to actually return it in this way. Have to return the values, all the modifications that you actually made inside the function, and when you need it, you have to return that, and you also have to catch it over here. Now it will actually work. Hmm, yeah, right now it's showing an error. Yeah. So it's returning a value as A and B. Let's turn A. Okay, as you can see, the properties are being actually changed. One, two. That property that was changed, it is still applicable thereafter, but the previous property is still not being changed. So that's how that return actually works through. Okay, so now let's go on to pass by reference. Okay, again we are defining a I object over here, like it's been defined before as well. Let's use this one only, right? So I'm defining another function, change object, okay, and in this, uh, I'm changing like A10 to some value as I've changed it to 2. Similarly, A of 12, I'm changing it to 3. A of 23, I'm changing to 4. Okay, and then let's console.log this my object. Hope this is clear. Now let's see. As you can see, even this was beforehand we when we haven't actually called the function, so it is showing a what as the way we have defined. But as soon as we change it inside the function, that changes are still applicable after thereafter. Like it's still showing 10 as 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So how what it does mean is that the all the parameters that you are passing, it is being passed by reference. So all the changes that you make inside the function will still be applicable after that function. So that's the basic difference between a pass by value and pass by reference. So changes inside the function will not be applicable outside the function. Whereas in pass by reference, changes inside the functions will be applicable. And which all happens is like all those var let const in numbers and strings actually are being passed by values, whereas all the objects and arrays are being passed by reference inside a JavaScript object. Okay, I hope this is all clear. Let's move on, I guess. So let's see something known as a uh, which mean which means for pass by value use const array, and for no array will be passed as a reference only when you want actually that array to not change and have some different value the modifications that you made. Let's see an example for that as well. Like assumingly you are doing some task in which you have an array. Where is this my array? Let's use different name only. Okay. So let's say I'm giving an array and I'm making a function as square. In this, we will be getting an array over here, and what I am saying is I'm getting a number and I will be returning a number into number over here. Okay, so that's how a square works. So what and another function, we are saying it as a map. Okay, over here I'm saying I will be getting a function and an array over here. In- Inside a function, the arguments that you provide can also be a function as well. We will be seeing just a second. So what it is saying is for, let's say, let I in my array, and we want to modify that. My array I should be what all the function that you have made and make it a my array I. So let's first we are actually printing the my array 2 and then actually calling this function. In this function I am saying I'm giving an argument of square as a function. I'm giving the function as an argument to this map function. I hope this is clear. You can give a function to another function as an argument. What happens over here is like you are providing and I'm taking it as a property. And then you can call this different function at any times that you want. Okay. So it works in this way. And let's see what will happen. So it is actually modifying the whole array only, and that modification are still applicable outside the function. So it is being passed by reference only. But let's assume when you need a case in which you actually don't want the original array to be modified. In that cases, you have to actually make a new array. Let's say answer array, and you will be pushing that over here. And then you will be returning that answer array, and then you will be actually getting that. And then in this now that your answer array and my array will be different, and all the modifications that you needed will actually be still applied. Okay, so this was some properties of arrays. Okay, let's move on then. There was some other operators as well. Like we till now we have explored what the numerical operators as were, but we there are other operators as well, like the bitwise one. First is an and. We know what and is. Okay, so how and works is you put 1 and 2, so this all will be converted into binary, and then the execution will perform and then output it like that. Second is or. Okay, or works in this way. Third is not, and not is a this operator. Okay, I hope everyone is know about all this. Then let's move on to a left shift operator. Left shift operator is in this way. You put two less than signs over here, and then this is the last one, right shift. These are okay. These are all the bitwise operators that is being used in JavaScript. There are other operators as well. There's a logical operators as well. It's quite similar to what happens in other languages as well. Like if you want an and, so what happens is you usually using this as an if inside an if or a while loop when you are mentioning some expression over here. Let's say x is less than 0 and you want x should be greater than minus 5. Okay, so this will ensure that both the conditions should be satisfied. Okay, so this is a logical operator. Second, let's see again, and this is an or logical operator. For this as well, we know like either 100 should be x should be greater than 100 or should be less than 0. If either of that condition is true, we will be using that. Okay. Third is a not operator. In logical not, that is different from a normal bitwise not. Okay. Over here, you mention a exclamation point over here. Okay. And you say x. And that will be the case when x is 0. This will be only satisfied till then. Okay. So these were all the operators that you can use in JavaScript. Okay. There's another thing known as ternary operators. This is actually applicable to other languages as well. So what happens in this case is you mention an expression over here. After that expression, you mention a question mark, and after that, what if that expression is true? This will be executed. If not, the second one will be executed. Okay. So let's say we are defining another same variable x is 5, and I'm saying x is less than 5 if then console.log less than 5. Similarly, console.log greater greater or equal to 5. Okay. So this works in this way. So first it will evaluate this expression, and if that expression is true, that for after the first expression after the question mark will be executed. If not, the second expression or the lines, or if even if it is a function that you are calling for it. Okay, so that's how ternary operators works. Let's see over here. As you can see, it's showing greater than or equal to so, yeah, I hope it's clear. Yes, like a helper function that we were doing in the map one. In the case this was a helper function over here. That's the terminology that you can use as well. Okay. Uh, let's take a break for 2-3 minutes. So like I can drink some water and then we will move on to JavaScript. This was all the basics that you needed to have for all the JavaScript language and all. After that, we will be moving on to things that are quite specific for JavaScript. Okay. Hello everyone. Yeah, I just took a short 2 minutes break. Let's begin with what we all have learned about till JavaScript. And okay, right now what we were doing till now was a JavaScript, and what we learned about it's normal programming things that we used to do in JavaScript. Okay, we haven't seen anything that actually connects it to an HTML or CSS as such. Okay, and now we will actually be seeing that part. Till now it was more like a programming recap only, and but this was quite needed in order to learn what how JavaScript works. Okay, over I'm making a new file only so that it doesn't becomes too clouded. Okay, I'm changing index to okay. So in HTML, what you would be doing is like you would be having some elements like a paragraph tag. Hi, this is a crash course on JavaScript. I hope I'm audible after. Yeah. So you actually want something to happen on this paragraph tag. Like you want some CSS to be applied over here. So let's say you say that color should be changed to blue. Okay. And for that, you can have some class as well to this. And even though you don't need, like I have used a CSS selector as a p tag only. Okay. So I want to actually, but what all you actually define in the HTML and CSS is still now. Okay, these all are part of being static over here. But let's say I want to have some proper, I'm building a functionality like there will be a button on clicking that button, that color will go from blue to red. That will actually include some dynamic property, and that will actually help the user to interact with the website. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm saying I want to build a button. Okay, I have to define a class for that, and it's saying click me. Okay, so this is how our HTML file will look like. So yeah, as you can see, there's a paragraph tag and there's a button over here. But right now, on clicking that button, it is not working because as such, because we haven't introduced anything for it. It's just a button. And how do we ensure that something happens on clicking that button is through JavaScript. But like like we know that this button is being clicked over here. But how does JavaScript knows that a button is being clicked and all? Okay, that happens via event listeners. Okay, what JavaScript has is like it defines every click, every double click, every hovering. Okay, like when you hover over an element, it defines it as an event, and as soon as that event occurs, it will see that if a function or something is being attached to that event, and if there is a function that is being attached, that will that function will be called. uh, like what we are trying to do over here, like we are saying we want to inculcate a func, and on clicking this button, we want a function to be called that will actually change the this paragraph tag color from blue to red. Okay, so let's try to do that. So what we are saying, we want to change color, we have to make a function for that. But now which actually which paragraph to change, we have that JavaScript should know that as well. Okay, so how do we ensure that it gets the right element that it has to be changed? Okay, so it happens in this way, that you call it like this: get document dot get element by class name. Since we have it as a class, we have mentioned it as a class. Okay, and over here you mention up what all classes you need. Okay, so this is known as a query selector. Okay, you actually, it's a method in order to get what all HTML elements were there. Over here you will be mentioning a class only, but like this there are other methods as well. Okay, like we saw the first one, get element by class name. Okay, similarly there's another as get elements by tag name, by tag name. And before all of this you have to mention a document dot, because document is the whole HTML document, it means by that. Okay, if I hover over here, it again tell me it's a method in order to get all the HTML collection, all the elements which have a tag name of this. Tag over here is P only. Okay, like if I mention a P over here, it will give me all the paragraph tags that are present inside my HTML, and it will be returning it in the form of a list. So this will be a kind of an array over here. Similarly for class name over here, it will be returning it as a list. But there's another one, how document dot get element by ID. An ID, but ID is supposed to be unique. So over here, it never returns a list. It returns the specific element only. Okay, like if I mention ID for this paragraph tag, I also mention an ID, let's say of special. So it will get me that paragraph only, and that we actually want that element only. So that's how we are actually getting that element. And as I already told you, class and tag will actually return a list of the elements that have a class name as paragraph. In a doc in a web document, in a web page, there are a lot of elements. Okay, a lot of elements can have same classes and all. Okay, so it will return all of this. Right now we have only one, so we know that that element will be in a element one only, element zero. We can access it as a array only. And how do we actually change the uh, property is, we say dot style dot color. We want to change it to, we said we want to change it to red. Okay, and it will change it like that. For that, let's see how that console, that element HTML event looks like. Okay, right now I'm doing, we are going again to the console. We haven't called this function. Okay, so right now I'm not changing the color. I'm just calling this change color over here now. Let's see. As you can see, it is actually returning this element only. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, any issues over here? Yeah, as you can see, it has just a paragraph IDs. It has all those things that we have mentioned over here. Now, what we wanted to do was change the color to its red. First, actually also see like how it looks like. Element 0 dot style dot color. So it will show that property to us first, and then it will then we will try to change that. Okay, so it isn't not showing property. Why is it? Oh, okay. So we will try to update that. Uh, let's see. As soon as we load it, it is changing to red. So what is happening right now? We don't have any event right now, but I'm just showing you a function that is actually changing the color of that paragraph tag into red. So what is happening is as soon as that HTML is being loaded, then CSS is loaded, and then it moves on to JavaScript. Okay. But that HTML and CSS loaded so fast that you are not able to see the you will not be able to see the actually time lapse of happening. But sometimes you must have encountered like you are browsing some websites and somehow that page is not fully loaded. It is showing all those elements and components, all those buttons in a in a vertical way. It is all there and any CSS is not being applied. You must have somehow encountered that. So that's how it works. First HTML is loaded, then CSS is loaded, then index, then JavaScript is loaded. If your net is too good, it gets loaded so fast that you will not be able to see the difference. Okay, so how it works is as soon as it moves on to JavaScript, it it executes line 3, 4, 5, and then sees like 6 to 11 is a function. It is that event function is being declared or not, and then it goes on to line 13, and that line 13 is being executed as soon as it comes around. Okay, as soon as that line 13 comes around, it executed, and when it goes on to the function, it will see that it gets that element by class name dot para, and then that is being console.log, and then its color is being changed into red. Okay, and that simply gets that color. Okay, but all of this happened so fast that you will not be able to see right now. Okay, but I hope everyone is able to see like how can we in this way only we will be changing all the CSS, all the HTML as well. Okay, we can change its content over here as well. Let's say element 0 dot inner HTML. We want to change it to initially it was the hi, this is a crash course on JavaScript, and I'm saying is add that this button has now been clicked. Okay. Right now it will work even we haven't clicked that button, but I hope you all get it how we can change the HTML CSS content through JavaScript. We just have to get that element through this either or any in either of these three methods, but you can use a class name, tag name, ID as well. There's no issue in that. Okay, you just have to get that element, and as soon as you get that element, you can change its property. Okay, but what we wanted to do in the before, we wanted to have on that click of that button, only then we actually wanted that color to be changed. So how do we ensure that is using event listeners. So how do we do that is put document dot add event listeners. Please see the syntax for it over here. And over here in argument, you mention two values. First is the thing on which you want to actually uh, do, okay, and then the function that you want to call. Okay, but over here it doesn't has to be a document. It can be any any element as such. If I actually put a document over here, it will ensure an event listener to whole document. And as soon as I click on that web page at any point, it will change the color. I have to comment this out right now. Now let's load it. Right now it's blue only. And as soon as I click on over anywhere, it will actually change that. Okay, right now it's not a button, but yeah, as we can see, as soon as we click on the button, it is being clicked and clicked and clicked, because that function says that concatenate every time that this button has been clicked. Okay, but we actually want that to be associated to that button only. So how do we ensure that? In the same way that we change the CSS and HTML properties, that we have to first get that element. Okay, and how do we get that element? In this way only. So we will be getting that element by a method known as get elements by class name, that para, and in that we know that it's the first index one, so we are using that only. And over here you mention it like this, element 0. So we are saying that element 0, which is the button. On that button, add an event listener as a click, and as soon as that event is being executed, execute this function. I hope this is clear to all. Okay, now let's load it again. So exactly that we wanted is being happening. As soon as I click on the button, oh, it's not being loaded. So let's see why it's not being loaded over here. Hmm. Oh, sorry. We are actually getting the paragraph only. We have to get that button. Button is by the class name btn, not para. So that was an error from my side. This was a logical error, not anything else. We have to mention the class name as btn, and then it will work. Okay, now I'm clicking that button, and as soon as I click that button, that color has been changed to red, and that new line is being added. And as soon as I click it on, it will work the same. Yeah, this is one way of having an HTML event listeners. You can have different as well. Like in you can define it in this different ways as well. On click, you must have used of all this. So, but this is a quite a general way to do it, and you can do this as well. Like let's have a different one. I'm saying element 2 document element by ID, and over here I'm saying special. We know that this element will be selected over here, this paragraph tag. Okay, now let's see something different, some different event listeners as such. Let's say a double click. Okay, mm, the double click is not in this way, it's a TBL. Okay, yeah. So I'm saying you can define the functions in this way only. So I'm saying element 2 dot style. Now let's actually have that background color. Let's change the background color to a yellow. Okay. So what I'm doing is, as soon as that we double click on that element, it will call a function, and it will change the background color of that into yellow. Okay. I hope this is all clear. Okay, explain six line, explain all of this again. Okay, so let me go through this again. So what happens is in this is when you are actually inculcating JavaScript, you want when users does something, you actually want your web page to respond to it. Okay, so how do we ensure that? Using event listeners. you actually attach every action that happens on the web page to, you declare it as an event, and as soon as that event occurs, you will call a function. So how do we do that is, you select that element on which that function action or that event has to be occurred, put dot add event listeners, what event you actually want to see, and then the function that it is. Okay, I hope this is clear now. Let's Okay. So we know about this click me and all. Okay. Now what my function was, on double clicking this should actually turn the background color to yellow. Now let's see, I'm double clicking it, and as you can see that the background color has now changed to yellow, and both properties is still being valid. As soon as I click on it, this is being added, and on double clicking, since it already has that property as yellow, it will the you will not be able to see the change. I have zoomed it again so you can see. I am double clicking on it, and it has changed the background color to yellow, and on click me, that property, that text is being added. Okay, so as you can see, how can, using JavaScript, how can we change the properties of CSS and HTML, and using event listener we can ensure when this does to happen. Okay, like it should not happen as soon as that loads, because then the user will not be able to see the change. So using event listener, we can ensure that as soon as someone clicks on that button, then something should occur, otherwise it should not. Okay, let's move on then. Yeah, it will work on paragraph only, as it will work till where the paragraph actually exists. Okay, this is what event listeners are in JavaScript. So using this, let's build a game somehow. Okay, we will be trying to building a game that will actually will you all will get to know what all events are. Okay, we are starting with a new JavaScript only, JavaScript file. All those problems that you have within right now with event listeners and all will be cleared right now, will be cleared when we build this game. Okay, so what we will try to do is, I'm actually commenting all this out, and we will be seeing all of, I'm saying an h1 tag. This is a reaction game. Okay, over here you put a button, a start game, and then button as reset game. So how, what that game is saying is that as soon as you click on start game, you will be given uh, certain shapes of elements, and you have to click on it, and we will be just monitoring what time did the user take to actually click that div and all. Okay, let's see, we have that. Now over here we will have a div. We will give it as a class of playground, because in this our game will be ensured, and inside this we will have another div which will be the of class shape. We can have id as well, because there's only one, so over here it doesn't matter that a lot. Okay. Right now we are saying is, playground, and we are saying background color to, let's say, black. Okay. Please don't focus too much on CSS right now. Okay. And since it doesn't have a height and width right now, so let's define the height as 300 pixels and a width of 500, 200 pixels. So this is our playground over here. We can increase the width. Yeah. And yeah. So what we were trying to ensure is as soon as that first, let's get also give the ID properties to these buttons so that we can get them. So I'm saying const start button document dot get element by ID, and I'm saying start. So that will actually give me that start button only. And on start button dot on click, we can have a function defined over here as well. This is another way of having an event listener, but this is for only for click. We can have this for other events as well. On add event listener, saying click, and then defining the function like this. And we are saying we have to start the game. How we will start the game is we will change the change properties of, okay, we will be changing the properties. We will be calling this function only. And we will also be noting the time that currently has been there. So that time has to be a global variable. So this is a function that is inbuilt in the JavaScript, and you can go through this by you can googling as well and see all the things that you can get through this. And in this change property, now we will be defining the function as change properties. Name as over here. We will be just changing the we will be getting the shape property for shape element first. Okay. Now do we get it? Document dot get element by ID and then shape, and we will be changing the shape property. Shape element dot style dot, let's say we are changing the color for it as blue. Okay. I hope it's okay, and we will be changing the similarly the width as well. Okay. Let's change some other properties as well. So currently what we have done is Yeah. As soon as I put the start game over here, it will show me an div. Okay, it's not working. Button is clicked. Now let's decode it why it's not working. Yeah, start button is being getting clicked. Then it is going to this change properties. It is get is it getting that shape? Let's see that. Okay, we have to change it as a background color. Okay, now it will work. Okay, as you can see, as soon as I clicked on that button, that div properties changed. Before that, the div properties, let me show you that div properties that it have. Okay, right now, if I didn't have this and I console.logged it out again, it is it doesn't have any properties as such. Okay, this will be much clearer to you all. As you can see that this is all the CSS properties that is in the we can actually go through and we can change. Like it's showing background color as none, so it doesn't have any background color and it's just not visible to you. Okay, it doesn't have that width and height as well. G as you can see, it doesn't have an height as well as a width. Even if we go to that width as well, as you can see, there's so much properties over here and you can change any of this. Like we are changing quite basic ones only right over here, but that concept is being applied to everything. So as soon as we click on that button, the properties are changing. Okay, and yeah, reload it and then okay. So what is happening is as soon as we start click on the button, that game is being started, and we will get that time right now because we are actually getting the reaction time for it. And we will be consoling.log whatever was the last time that the event got executed. So over here we will get a new date, not over here, because we want to reuse this function when we actually click on that shape element as well. Because as soon as we click on that element should again change its properties. Okay, we are saying on click of that element, execute functions as that, get the current time and then console.log time minus last. So basically what is happening is that last will be stored somehow in the this variable last click was at what time it existed. As soon as you click it again, that last time and the current time it will be subtracted, and then you will get the reaction. How much time did the person user take in order to get that? I hope this is clear to all. And then we will move on to the next part. Uh, and as soon as that we get that time, and we will be calling that property change again, because the game should go on, like game should not stop. Okay, right now the properties that are being changed into is quite constant. We actually want this to actually we want this to change. We will be have a function for that as well, but right now you all be able to get what we have built. So as soon as we click on start game, click on this button, there are some things that are being printed out. First thing that is being printed out is the time that is being taken by me to actually click on this element, and this is in milliseconds, so it is around 2 seconds only. And then it is printing out all the CSS properties. Like right now it has been quite a while since I haven't clicked it again. I am clicking it again, and this it will show me the properties. As you can see that it has been now 28 seconds. So this is what the game is. Okay. Right now what we have to, that's the base of what we have built in that game. I hope event listener is being clear to all of you. What all we will be doing after in this project is the things that is in the normal programming language. That is not something being specific to JavaScript, but is more of a what all the algorithms that you will be going through. Yeah, I guess it's clear to all. Yeah. So I'm actually I will have already built this game uh, in my notes as well. Okay. So I am actually importing that file, but I will be going through all the functions as such. But if I actually go through all of this and try to uh, code it alongside it, it will take too much time. So that's why I'm actually importing that file, and we will be going through all those documents again. Don't worry. Okay. So it's in the 17. Okay. This is how the games looks like. I will show you the code as well. This is what the final version we want. So what we will doing is on start game. Why it's not- Let me open the JavaScript as well. Yes, you can see an image, a, shape has been covered over here. Okay. So it has a very different, it is in circle, it is not over here, it has a left and top property as well. Okay, so as soon as I click on it, it will show my reaction time over here, and that again property change, color is changed, the height and width is changed, the border radius is changed. Again I click on it, so as soon as I click on it, that reaction time is being changed. Okay, so in the first as well it was visible, it's just like it's downwards. Okay, so we can reset that game, and then it will again we can restart that game. I hope everyone is able to see the game. Now let's go through the code so that everyone can understand. So what I am tried to do was that change properties function. It's just that the show shape property only. Over here I have some variables as as a start time. Okay, and if it's saying if start time is undefined, it's just the meaning of that is we are just starting the game only. Okay, so that current time will get a new date, and we are actually getting the time taken property over here. Okay. The CSS, the HTML looks like that we have a header tag in which we have an H1 tag, and then we have game buttons, have a start button and a reset button like we had in R1, and we had a reaction panel. In this reaction panel, we are actually changing the values over here in this time taken. So what this JavaScript is doing is like it's getting that element, this span it is getting, and it is changing its inner HTML into start. What is the difference between a start time and current time? Okay, and it is adding at a ms as well, right? A millisecond as well. Okay, so that's what this code is doing. And if it is undefined, so it means it like it is just started, so it doesn't have a reaction till now. Okay, and then we will be getting our main element. And right now what I'm doing over here is I'm actually ensuring that I will come to this line 34 to 36 in just a second. I'm just I have got this shape element like that we got over there. And now what we are trying to do is I'm just calling a function as a random number generator, and I'm giving it what is the start and the end for it. So it will, this function, what it will do is it will give me a random number between a start and end. Okay, so start plus math dot floor. Math is a library that is in the JavaScript. Floor function, you must know what it is again a random function in JavaScript gives me a number between a 0 to 1, and that number, in order to get it between a start and end, I have done this, and it will get me a height and width for that. Okay, similarly a border radius, again we are getting a number between 0 to 50, and we are applying that property into that. Similarly, a left and top is being again get getting that property. I have used this parent with parent height so that our website is responsive as well, and it doesn't actually, like we are right now currently seeing on a laptop laptop or a desktop. Okay, but we are actually making it some in this way that this game can be played on a mobile phone as well, because in mobiles the width and the height of the screen changes, so that parent width and parent height also changes. Okay, but if we give the width between 0 to 800 pixels, like I should have a width of between 100 to 800 pixels, that will actually overflow in a mobile. In a laptop or a desktop it might not, so that's why it will ensure that that it doesn't get overflow. So that's why I have used this into 0.7. You can change all of this and you can experiment with all of this. This is more of a programming logic over here, not of JavaScript. This can be for any language as well. Okay, so I have given that left and top property. Again, for this RGB format, I'm giving a giving it in a format of RGB 6 number in a hexadecimals. Okay, 0 to 255, I will be getting a number that will define the R property of that RGB. Similarly, this will give a green property and blue property. I hope everyone is familiar with the CSS, how the numbering is done. It's just that I'm calling this. Okay. Again, all of this is being given over here, and I have given it as a display property of block, so it will be visible now. Okay, and I'm actually disabling the start button again so that it doesn't, like we have already started the game only, so you can only disable, you can only reset that button. So this is the function that is being we have written, and we are just adding an event listener of that button one. Okay, button one is the start button only, as we can get from here, and it is attaching an event click to this function. Okay, similarly we are adding another event listener to that shape, that same function, because that That start game should also show a shape, and as soon as we click on that shape, it should change the properties of all those shape. Okay, again, and then this btn2 will be a reset button. It is just saying that the shape that was visible till now, make it invisible right now. Start game, make it again, that disabled should be turned on to false, so it should be abled again. And we are making that start time is undefined as well. Okay, again, and time taken as uh, nothing. I hope everyone is able to go through the code. You can, I will also put it on the my GitHub link, and you can go through that as well. So how this is work is like, as soon as you click on that button, the color and properties, all properties changes for that, and the reaction time is being noted over here. So this is how a event listener works for it, and you can inculcate in this event listener to all your websites as such, like button properties that you must have seen in some websites, as that uh, that like you have, in order to read more of that websites and all, you have to log in as such. Okay, so like that, when you click on a button, then certain a div opens up. Apart from that, that div is quite invisible, only the heading is visible. All of these things can be ensured via a JavaScript, and that's how you inculcate by an event listeners. I hope this was clear to us. Yes, I am sharing the code, don't worry. So I please go through this. I'm not sure how I can put it on the chat. Yes, yeah. I have put it on the chat box. Yes, you can see. Okay, let's move on to the next part then. What we have done is event listeners. Any questions if you would like to ask? Let's get it clear right now, then let's move on to the next. Over here, we were over here. Yeah. So right now, till over here, we used to do event listeners. Let's see that arrays inbuilt functions. All the things that you actually need in order to join JavaScript to HTML, CSS. What I have told you, that event listeners, you can change all the CSS and HTML properties for that, you have done till now. Okay, let's see some inbuilt functions of uh, JavaScript. Okay, like I'm defining an array. We will be going through this quite quickly because these are quite general. One, two, okay. We have console.log my array dot includes and one. Okay, so this will output me as a true or a false. Okay, similarly, if you need the index as well, so you could put my array dot index of and put index of, and it will give you the index as well. So that's how arrays works. Okay, You can actually make an array to a string. So it works like that. My string, my array got joined by this. Okay. So what it will do is it will join the whole elements via this one. Let's see what will be the output for this. Index2.js. I have to. So yeah, it's saying 1, 2, 4 as a string only. As you will be able to get that. There's nothing complicated in this. Okay. We can again split as well. I'm saying a const my array to my string dot split, and I'm saying split looking this. As soon as a comma is being observed, split that my string into some different array. Okay. And let me console.log as well. So again, it has been, but now it has been as a string only. That array has initially it was a numbers, now it has been converted into a string. That's the only issues that happen. That is over here. Okay. We have seen all of this like a square function. How to we define that? Okay. So there's another function known as map. Okay. This is an inbuilt function that it is. Okay. So what it will do is it will map everything and it will return an array. It's just like how we did uh, before only, like we inculcated and made another function as map only, and we were passing a square as an argument over him. So over here it works the same only. So it will go through all the elements and it will actually output all of this. And it will make it into a new array. Okay, this is how a map works. As you can see, it's a 1 4 16. Okay, we can change the array 7 8. Okay, this works the same. It goes through all the elements. Map means it will go through all the elements and it will apply the properties that you have mentioned in the function, and whatever it is returned, it is being stored into a new array. Okay, this is how a map property. This, like when you actually move on to React, React, then you will be using this a lot. Okay, similarly, you can have a as a filter. So as the name suggests, filter is like whatever is in this will not be executed, will not be included. Okay, filter this part. Okay, so I'm saying is console.log. So what do you think this function is doing? Basically, it's filtering out what are the odd numbers. So it has filtered it out all the odd numbers that it is. All those that satisfies this condition will be in the output array. All those who doesn't will not be over here. Okay, so this filter function will also comes in a lot of programming logic. Like if you are actually building a website in which you have to delete some element over here. Okay, so how you would be deleting, and in the array you have to delete certain index over such. Okay, if you know the index as such, you will be if I told you normally is you will be going through the you will be making a function and you will be going through all those arrays. You will making a new array, and pushing all the elements, and as soon as that deleted element encounters, you will not push it, and you will be returning that answer array. This is one way. Okay, this is a quite a simple way. You just put a filter, and you could put if id, if x dot id is equal to that id that you have gotten it. Okay, so that will ensure that uh, that exact element is being deleted. So this is another array method as such. Okay, so after all of this, what we have learned till now, this is all still is comes under the JavaScript that happens under a synchronous JavaScript. Okay, now we will be moving on to what is an asynchronous JavaScript, and this part is the most, like, what happen is quite important over here. Okay, right now what we would do, what we have done till now is synchronous JavaScript, and I also will be telling you what is synchronous and asynchronous with an example, with an analogy in a real life. Like assumingly you all go to restaurants, right? When you go to a restaurant, uh, you will be ordering some dish, and that dish will be given to a chef. Okay, chef what will be doing? The chef will have some instruction, and he will be executing that instruction step by step in order to make that dish. Like he will be first, like let's say we are making a Maggie, so he will be boiling water, then putting the Maggie packets, Maggie and flavor into it, and then let it cook. Okay, so that this all happens in a synchronous way. This happens all one after the other. So that's how a dishes is made. Okay, chef has to execute all of this line by line, and he doesn't can be like first execute one line, like still as soon till line one doesn't execute, he doesn't cannot go on to line two. Okay, so that's what means by synchronous. I hope everyone is clear with that. Okay, so what happens in asynchronous is like in the same restaurant there will be a waiter over here. Okay, so waiter, what will waiter do as soon as that you consumers come over here, that he will uh, that he might go and he will give the menu to the users. Okay, okay, and then he will actually not uh, will be stand will not stand over here to that consumer only, like the first you should be give me the order only, give me the order. He will move on to next consumer as well. Okay, like he will move on to the next human consumer and give him the menu as well, or whatever that consumer is doing. Okay, so as soon as that first consumer calls him that, hey, I want to give the order, then he will be taking the order, and then he will be giving it to the chef. Between that, it's not necessary that after this order he will be moving that he will not actually wait the chef to complete the order. Till then he will not do any work. He will move on to the next consumer and will actually take their order and give their order to the to some other chef, or a new consumer has come that he will be giving them menu, or someone will be asking for bill. So he will be doing all this in an asynchronous way. He doesn't have to do in a very synchronous way, that he have to go to only one consumer, and until unless that consumer moves out of the restaurant, he will not leave them. So yeah, I hope everyone get this analogy what is in a synchronous and asynchronous way. Okay, so what happens synchronous and asynchronous way, what all we have learned till now is a synchronous way. All the JavaScript that we have written over here, it actually executes line by line only. Okay, but that's what we don't need in JavaScript. JavaScript provides a property of asynchronous because, like, your front end will be calling the backend for some data only. If the front end has all the data, we actually don't need that front end. Okay, that is a quite a static website. All those web applications, the Facebook, Netflix that you are using, that is actually communicating to the backend to get some data, and that data can take any amount of time. You don't know what all amount that it will take. Let's take an example of Hotstar. You all must have Hotstar or Netflix. Okay, so you must have all used them a lot. Okay, so what happens in Netflix and Hotstar is, like, uh, you open that applications. Okay, over here you must be having, like, you must be having that new films poster over here, and over here you will be having some recently watched. Okay, and you some recommendations are over here, and then over here on the downsides you have other as well. But this recently watched and this recommendation are quite specific to users, and all of this are uh, common to this user, this part and all the other movies that is being showed over here. Okay, so what happens in Hotstar, Netflix, and all other Prime Video as well? So this is being called, okay, and all of this data comes in a different way, and all of this recommendation and recently watched comes in a different way. Okay, in a different data format, in different functions. Okay, so it's more like you call for the this data in a different function, you call for this data in a different function. Sometimes what happens is that the recommendation service that the Hotstar and Netflix have is not working correctly. So even though it's not working correctly, you will be still able to go through all the Hotstar. It's just that that recommendation tab will not be over here, and you will be able to go through all the others movies as such. That is the common for all the users. Okay, so that's how asynchronous works. Even though that recommendation is taking so much time, JavaScript and JavaScript will not actually wait for it to complete. It will move on to the next function. And as soon as that function, if it's completed, then it actually shows that. I hope everyone is able to get this synchronous and asynchronous. Okay, so this was a quite an important topic for a synchronous and asynchronous way, and it's somehow the JavaScript makes it quite usable. Okay, and we will be going through some two functions that is in a asynchronous way that you can use. One is set timeout. So what it is means is, you mention the functions as like this, and you mention the time after which that function has to be executed. Okay, so it works in like that. You mention it in a millisecond format. So this means it 2 seconds. So what this means is, execute this function only after 2 seconds. Okay. And what I'm doing is, before timeout and after timeout. If this would have been a synchronous way, the output would be first console.log before timeout, then it would have waited for 2 seconds, and then console.log 2 seconds passed, and then after timeout. But since set timeout works in an asynchronous way, it will work like this. Okay, it is going before timeout, after timeout, and then 2 seconds passed. So it is not waiting that 2 seconds in a synchronous way. It is waiting an asynchronous way. Like like it knows that it has to wait for 2 seconds. It will let that 2 second pass, and when that 2 second has passed, then it will execute that function, and l- for that 2 seconds, it will move on to the next line. Okay. I hope everyone is able to get this part. This is quite important topic, and this is how the asynchronous work. Okay, this is one function that is in a set timeout. There's another one. This is as set interval. So set intervals is as similar as set timeout only. It's just that like in set timeout, that function will be executed after 2 seconds. In set intervals, it will be executed after every 2 seconds. Like if I mention a 2000 over here, okay, and I will log uh, interval of 2 seconds. Now let's see. So again, before timeout, after timeout, and as soon as 2 seconds pass, yeah, this is executed. And now its counter will be increased and all because after every 2 seconds it is getting output. It's just that the property of Google Chrome that if the last output and all the same, that it will actually increment this. Okay, so this is how functions and all are there. Over here, the next part is the callback functions. Okay, so what happens when you do a callback functions? What are callback functions? All those functions that you give inside an asynchronous functions are known as callback functions. And why do we need that functions? Because there are some things that you want to execute only after some other function has been executed. I will repeat this part. Like why do you need that callback functions? You want some functions to be executed only after some other function have been executed, and that asynchronous function can take any amount of time. Like in set interval and set timeout, this is an asynchronous function. Okay, we know that it will take 2 seconds, but like other asynchronous function like calling that data from the backend, we don't actually know the exact amount of time it will take. Okay, but as soon as we get that data, then only show that recently viewed, okay, recently or that recommended movies for that. Okay, so that is a con callback functions. Okay, as soon as we get that data, output that into the window. So this is the a callback functions that you need. Okay, this was a definition of a callback function, and was quite important for it. Okay, the last topic for today I would like to go through is an event loop. Okay, this is quite an important topic in JavaScript language, and if you understand this, all those interviewers can ask the questions on this, and if you understand this, you will actually be able to clear all the interviews, and the interviewer will be quite impressed with you. Okay, that you know about the event loops. Okay, so event loops, how it works in JavaScript, there are three types of data structures. How JavaScript is made: one is a stack, one is a queue, and one is a heap. I hope everyone is knows about these three. Stacks and queues are quite easy. It's like you push to top and pop from the top only. It's queue is you uh, push from the back and you pop from the front. Heap can have a different constructors as well, but the mainly one is like it's a min heap or a max heap. So min heap means the top element will be the minimum element, and in the max heap, it's the top element is the maximum element. But you can also change the constructors for it as well. Okay, so how JavaScript event loops works is as soon as a script is loaded, all those data, all those lines and all are actually being inserted into a queue. Okay, okay, that all this will happen by line. Like line one will execute first, then it gets popped, then line two will get executed and then it get popped, line three will get executed. Okay, like then on line four, assumingly it's calling to another function. um yeah, like we have been doing this a lot, like in some part we are calling that function that change that color. Okay, so that will be called in a stack. Okay, so stack, how does it work? Like line 4 function over here is there, and whatever it is calling like change color will be inside that stack. And as when this returns, then this will be popped, and then this will be popped. So that stack becomes empty, then this queue gets popped. Okay, right now I'm telling you about a stack and queue only. We will move on to heap in just 2 minutes. Okay, let's move on to line 5, and it is actually calling a factorial of, let's say, 10. So how that factorial will execute? Okay, that fact 10 will be over here, and it will be calling fact 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and okay, and one will return some value. Well, one will not be calling something. Okay, and that as soon as that one is called, it gets value in 2, 2 returns the value to 3. Similarly, it goes on, and then 9 will return that value to 10, and then this stack is completely empty. Then the queue will actually move on and this pop it out. This is quite similar to every language. Okay, now comes the part of that event loop. What all you actually call this asynchronous functions, I hope please focus on the word asynchronous, actually goes onto a heap. It doesn't goes onto a stack. Okay, all the synchronous function goes to a stack, but all the asynchronous function goes onto a heap. Okay, so all those, like let me rub it out. Let me clear only. So right now what we did was, assumingly we have another queue. This is a new queue that we are calling. We have that heap over here and stack over here. And in this, it's something like a first function is a for loop, and the second is a recursion. And then we are calling a set timeout. Again, then we have another for loop. But this set timeout we are saying for 0 milliseconds. So 0 milliseconds, what it means was, like, we have to wait for a zero. We just don't have to wait, but we are just calling that function. Okay, so how that it will execute is that this queue will come on and this for loop will be popped. As soon as it get executed, this recursion will come and it will move on to the stack, and as that recursion completes, it gets from the queue. Now comes the new part. This set timeout, since it's a asynchronous function, it moves on to the heap and it will wait for 0 milliseconds. 0 milliseconds gets executed as soon as it now. Okay, and this gets popped out over here. Okay, as soon as that function, the waiting time completes, it gets added to the queue, but in the back. That's the main part. It gets added in the back. Okay, this set timeout, whatever that function, callback function that you had been mentioning, would now be over here. So all those for get executed now and then callback. Even though we have waited for 0 milliseconds, it will wait for all the queue before that to be executed and then will get added. Let's see the code for this as well. Okay, right now what we are doing is console.log. I'm actually commenting this out. I'm consoling.log 1 set timeout, and I'm saying wait for like a 1 second. Console.log 3 again, and last uh, 4, but I'm saying wait for just 0 milliseconds. That means, so what will be the output for this? Like if it would have been a synchronous way, the output will be 1 2 3 4 5 only. If there was an if doesn't there was not a thing as an event loop, and as soon as that, if we have give a timer to something and as soon as it's completed, we have to execute that part. Okay, so how do we ensure that? So it moves like, if that would have uh, be the case, so the output will be like output 1, then output 3 because 2 has been waited for 1 second, then output 4 because 4 wait is 0 seconds, and then 5 and then 2. But this is not how event loops works. So that line 69 goes to a queue, it gets executed, and 1 is being printed. Line 70 to 72 gets inside that queue, it sees that it is an asynchronous function, it moves on to a heap. Okay, and at heap it has to wait for 1 second. Then it moves on to line 73, it sees that it's a normal one, so 3 will be printed. So what is still now 1 and 3. Again it will move on to line 74 to 76, will move on to a heap. It has to wait for a 0 seconds only, so that wait is immediately being completed. But it will move on to the queue, but after line 77. So line 77 will execute first, and then that console.log 4 will get executed. You can see all of this over here. As you can see, 1, 3, 5. Since 4 has been completed before 2, that's why it has been moved to queue before. And since it's a first in first out method, it happens in this way. I hope this was clear to all. This was in the JavaScript course, like what I wanted to teach you. I hope everything was to you quite clear. You can try various versions for this on your own as well. Like you can, let's say if I actually call a for loop over here and console.log I. For loop is not a asynchronous way. It will actually uh, go in a synchronous way. So what will happen is 1, then 0 to 9 will be printed, then it will move on to yes. Okay. You can try various functions for that. Please go, if you don't understand this event loop, go through this again, because this is the most important part of the JavaScript. If you get this, you will able to answer a lot of questions of that interviewer will ask to you. So that's what I would like to teach all of you. I hope you enjoyed the class today. The recording will be on this AccioJob session only, I guess. Uh, Over here, and if you guys want the certificates, and if you feel like there's a you can fill the form in the chat box over here. And thank you everyone.